In a spectacular comeback win over Maryland, Washington made some big-time adjustments that led to the victory.
You are Locked On Huskies, your daily podcast on the Washington Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into another edition of the Locked On Huskies podcast. I'm Roman Tomashoff. That's not Lars Hansen. That's my guy, Jake Butt with the Big Ten Network, a spectacular analyst who was on the call for Washington's game against Maryland. So we'll get to that in just a minute. Thank you for making this your first watch or first listen today, as we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKDOWNCollege for $20 off your first purchase. And just a quick reminder to all you everydayers out there, wherever you get this podcast, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, wherever that might be, make sure to click that subscribe button, click that little bell as well, so you never miss when we post a new show. Plus, if you're on the audio only side of things, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review, as it does help us out a lot. Now, Jake, we got a tremendous show coming out, all the everydayers out there today. We're going to spend some time at the end talking about some freshmen that might have caught your eye in this win over Maryland, because this is the first time you got to watch UW in person this year. We're going to talk about what momentum from a comeback win like this can do for a team, especially on a short week playing Rutgers on a Friday night. But you got to be the eye in the sky. You did a tremendous job calling the game for the Big Ten Network. And when you look at just some of the biggest adjustments from the first half to the second half, what were some of the things that just really stood out to you from this game?
Well, what really stood out first and foremost is I want to give a shout out to the hardest working man in Washington Huskies sports coverage, Roman Tomashoff, it was his birthday last weekend. It was the birthday week last week, and yet you're still taking time out of your day, catching me up on the storylines, helping me get prepared. So to the viewers that are tuning in, make sure you wish your host a happy birthday and thank him for all the work. So that's what stood out to me first and foremost. Second was, just talk about what a crazy game. Truly a tale of two halves, which is everything's working for Maryland on both sides of the football in the first half. Nothing's working for Washington on either side of the football in the first half. And then the second half comes, and after Maryland went down and scored, it was the exact opposite. Maryland could get nothing going, and all of a sudden, everything's clicking for Washington. I've never seen – that's the first time I've called a game where it was that contrasting and different half to half. I was really curious going into this game, though, Roman, is that coast-to-coast road trip. And we saw Penn State get upset by UCLA. Last year, Washington, you guys dominate Rutgers in every single key statistic, but lose. Like, these coast-to-coast road trips have proven to be very difficult. And it felt like in the first half that, Washington was just a little sleepy. And in particular, Dezmen Williams did not look like himself. I was wondering if maybe he's injured. Is he beat up a little bit? Is he not trusting himself? I made the point a few times that, if I think about wide receiver and quarterback combo in the Big Ten Conference, Dezmen and Denzel Boston are towards the top of the list, one of the first duos that comes to mind, and yet they just could not connect on easy throws too. Couldn't get Jonah Coleman going. Just across the board, I was very shocked. But that's why you play the game. And over 60 minutes, I didn't really think there was any major halftime adjustments or changes. I know you see Jonah Coleman get more carries, but it was more of a product of they were finally able to extend drives, which meant having more opportunities to give the ball to Jonah. So that's why you fight. A devastating loss for Maryland, too. There's two sides to every coin here. Mike Locksley, 0-10 off bye weeks. Look at his record in September, outstanding. Record in October and November, nope. Conference record, nope. That was a sold-out crowd, big recruiting weekend for Maryland. They needed that one and came out playing hard. It's just Washington ultimately got it done. Probably the key to the game, though, losing Sidney Stewart, the freshman pass rusher for Maryland's defensive line. Those two guys were getting after Dezmen. And all of a sudden, you lose Stewart to targeting. Zahir Mathis looked like he left the field with an injury briefly. Wasn't 100%. But once that pass rush slowed down, noticed a big difference there.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. That was one of the biggest things for me as I looked at this game was you could certainly tell a very big difference once Sidney Stewart did go out, because you and I were talking about this just before we pressed record. So much of what Maryland's pass rush was doing was attacking that left side, was attacking where you do have a true freshman in John Mills, who's been really good this year. I've been more than happy with him. It was unfortunate that he went down with an injury as well. And then a backup left tackle, Maxis McCree. And there were just so many different things that I know that you were getting a good look at up in the booth. But you could also just see the Demond Williams thing. One thing that you and I were also talking about over the weekend that it seemed like it played a little bit of a factor was the sun kind of one of those things where it feels like a little bit of an excuse, but it might have been something that these guys weren't able to adjust to in such a different setting early on in the game.
It looked like it. Like it definitely looked like guys were struggling to see the ball. And I was down there on the field. It was a beautiful day, a beautiful Saturday afternoon, but like there wasn't a cloud in the sky and the sun was shining. And I could tell you as a pass catcher that is very, very real. So it seemed like it played a factor. I texted some of the coaches and they said that they didn't think that was the case. But the thing is though, is it was just a little here, a little there. That first interception, Demond to Denzel, it's like it was a little bit high and a little bit behind him. And maybe the sun was a little bit in Denzel's eyes, leads to an interception. 10 guys are doing their job. One misses his block. That's the TFL. Demond, you're running a speed option out to the right, and he's caught in between, doesn't know, should he pitch to Jonah or not? So it's like all these like little things. Demond hits Jonah for a check down early in the game, and it's completed, but the ball is low and to his back knee. So Jonah has to go down and make a tough catch, put that accurately face mask high on his upfield shoulder. Jonah catches it, turns and runs, and it's probably a first down.
Right.
Maryland was, in their quarterback, Malik Washington, his accuracy and ball placement was outstanding in the first half. That was the difference. You put the ball in a place where your receivers can catch it easily, then they can tuck and run and get yards after the catch. It's not always just about completions. It's about the ball placement with the right velocity and a tight spiral so your guys can catch and run. And it was the little details that made the difference in Maryland's advantage in the first half and then to Washington's advantage in the second half.
And then when you talk about one thing with that advantage and when it flipped was Washington really, it seemed like there wasn't any gigantic stylistic changes on the defensive side of the ball, but it felt like there was more aggressiveness after that first touchdown drive in the second half. And it felt like they were just doing different things on some of these underneath routes, some of these screens where in the first half, Maryland was picking up 5, 6, 7 yards and they had 2 16-play drives in the first half. And then following that touchdown on the final 4 drives of the game, they picked up 52 total yards. What did you see from Ryan Walters, where maybe it's some different things in the pass rush? I know Jedd Fisch talked after the game that he mixed up some coverages on the back end and gave Malik Washington a cloudier picture to look at. Was there anything that just really jumped out to you on that side of the ball?
I heard that and I disagree. I thought that Walters was giving Malik a ton of looks. I mean, A-gap pressures, they're sometimes they're coming, sometimes they're dropping out of it. They mixed man, they mixed zone. I felt like they were coming after Malik in the first half, and Malik was just making the plays. I mean, there's literally 2 specific plays where there was a double move down the sideline. The first half, Maryland picks it up, and Malik hits, I think it was Octavian Smith or somebody, hits him on a double move down the sideline for a big play. In the second half, it's the exact same play. They pick it up, and Malik just misses him. So it was more about that Maryland's just lack of execution than anything else. And then what happens is it's a 3 and out, and you start to feel completely different. All it was just a matter of opportunities. In the first half, Maryland was converting on third down and extending drives. So there's a completely different feel. 3 and out, all of a sudden, you give credit to Washington, but all of a sudden it's got a completely different feel to it.
Yeah, and that's one of those things where it's really interesting. You talk about Mike Locksley being 0-10 off the bye, where it felt like he didn't necessarily want to go to anything that would just try to shorten the game, where I saw a stat that they ran the ball 4 times in the second half, even though they were up 3 possessions.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of those things where for Mike Locksley, at the very least, he can learn and adjust and try to move forward with this. I know that team hasn't done a good job of running the ball so far this season, but when you look at, especially on the Washington side of things, obviously, I feel like we saw a little bit better play from the defensive line in the second half as well.
Yeah, I mean, totally. Again, though, part of what Maryland does, like the numbers can be a little bit deceiving. They are heavy RPO, and they really use their wide receiver screens as like that's a big part of their run game. It's an extension of their run game. So to me, like, okay, when you talk about the quantity of runs in the second half, that's skewed by the 3 and outs in the shortened drives. But what I did notice was on the screens in the second half, the first half, Maryland's perimeter blocking was great, and Jaleel Farouk is breaking tackles and running through guys, and Dorian Fleming is everywhere and breaking tackles. But in the second half, when they started to run those screens, Leroy Bryant comes down and blows it up. I think Jacob Manu was out there one time. He blows it up. I think maybe even Esteen might have been down there. Like the guys that were thumping at the point of attack on those screens were just shutting down Maryland's screens right away. So I do believe like that part was a big piece of it. We even highlighted Uyunglele, though. Like some of the guys on the interior, I would agree with you that they did step up, and that's just such a big piece of Ryan Walters' system. Like you're going to have opportunities there. They went to the 5-man front a little bit, the 5-man shell, the surface in the second half. So it was a little bit of everything for sure.
On the other side of the break, let's dive into how Washington can build on a win like this. Right after a message from our good friends over at Prize Picks. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Every day we make decisions, but on Prize Picks, being right can actually get you paid. Don't miss the excitement of this football season with Prize Picks, where it's good to be right. Playing Prize Picks is such a fun, simple way to add more excitement to football. You just pick more or less on player projections, like Josh Allen's passing yards or Saquon Barkley rushing for a touchdown, and you're in the game. I love how quick it is. You can make your lineup in under a minute. My favorite part, Prize Picks just added stacks, so if I want to ride with a player, I can select their pass yards, rush yards, and touchdowns all in one lineup. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKDOWNCollege to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKDOWNCollege for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. So Jake, when you just kind of think about your own experience playing for Jedd Fisch, a game like this, I'm sure, can do a lot for a team. When you're down 20-0 midway through the third quarter, you're able to come back and win that game. How can Washington, especially in a short week against Rutgers, build on a victory like this?
Well, I think there's everything is like there's such a big psychological part of football, and I was really trying to hammer that point home there in the second half. And there's the psychological aspect within the game and within any even given drive or a quarter situations, but then there's the psychological aspect of a team's season and of like multiple consecutive seasons. And for Washington, one of the key pieces here is like the inability to win on these road games.
Yeah.
And you win this game, that is huge for a team to finally get that weight off your shoulder. This was a game, come halftime, Washington was not supposed to win this game. So now you have the identity of a team that's willing to fight, and a team that all of a sudden Jedd can say, hey guys, it doesn't matter. As long as there's time left on the clock, we have the guys that can lead us back and bring us to victory, as long as we have a fighting chance. And then the other piece of this is, Washington feels, and I know you and I agree, like this is a team, a potential playoff team, right? Like they need some things to go their way. This win, bouncing back after a physical loss to Ohio State, refocuses you and puts you right back into that same conversation of, hey guys, we're right here. We're right here. We need to clean some things up. The penalties, the self-inflicted wounds, some of the general mistakes, but they're right back in it. And this one is less about Washington refocusing. This is going to be a really tough test for Rutgers now, going coast to coast on a Friday to take on the Huskies.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And there's so many interesting things from that game. Whether I've been really intrigued with Ethan Kalik so far this season. I'm very excited to see what this matchup is going to look like with Washington secondary, with Takario Davis potentially being back for this game. And that's kind of where I want to take this, because we've seen Washington struggle with injuries so much this year. But I look at the depth that this team has put together in Jedd Fisch's second season, and it feels like he's somebody who, I mean, you obviously have a much better experience of, playing under him and just learning what he's like on when it comes to how he sees the game and how he evaluates talent. It feels like he's done such a better job of just putting together a roster that can go out and win these kinds of games now, these slugfests, these physical battles where I know some people were a little outraged, I should say, when he compared the UW Ohio State physicality to Oregon Penn State, which is, its own thing that we don't need to dive into. But he's someone
I see what he means, though. Like
I absolutely
that was Ducks fans that would have said that no matter what, because they just hate
true.
Washington. But yeah, I see what he means.
So no, I completely agree with you there. But it's one of those things where you see the physicality that is added to the team this season. You look at the depth and all of the talent that he's been able to infuse onto this roster. I feel like I look at the schedule moving forward, and even though Washington is going to play 3 more opponents coming off a bye so far this year, including this week against Rutgers, I feel like he's the kind of guy where you look at what kind of halftime speech he must have given and everything, that he is the kind of coach that can just make sure his players rise to the occasion with, Michigan 2 weeks down the line and then Illinois right after that too.
Oh yeah, I mean, and that's what a coach does. That's why you get paid. That's the majority, in my opinion, of what a head coach is paid to do. It's to, first off, he's done a great job of scouting talent. Like, not the recruiting websites aren't always right. I know when Michigan turned around their program, you looked at a lot of guys that were like 2 and 3 stars, and that's just because Jim Harbaugh would say, yeah, we trust our evaluation of prospects more than someone from Rivals or 247. And that's what Jedd has been able to do, is not just evaluating good players, but players that fit within the scheme and players that love football. And that's how your culture is built. And then the other thing is just the schematic belief. And if you're asking about my personal experience, I played 2 years with Brady Hoke, and we had 2 different coordinators. And then in comes Jim Harbaugh, and Jedd Fisch was our coordinator. And I will never forget that very first spring ball in fall camp with Jedd as our play caller. I was like, oh my gosh, this is what it's supposed to look like. This is what it's supposed to feel like. It was almost like we had never been coached before that day. We never snapped the ball at a schematic disadvantage. Like, sometimes teams will just say, you got us on this play call. Let's just run it into pressure and we'll, figure it out on the next down. No, Jedd had an answer for everything. One, he believed in his initial play call based on scouting and schematics, but he also understood that, hey, they can adjust too. So I'm going to have a counter punch to your counter. And he hires coaches that agree with that. Like, Ryan Walters is a 5-man front, cover 1 pressure defense. Yeah. But we've seen him mix in more 4-man fronts and 3 safety looks and more zone. Did it against Ohio State. So he's challenging Walters to be a little bit more fluid with the scheme. And I just think that those are just like little things, like little seeds that get planted on your roster where, you plant them during the spring and in the fall camp. And now the fall is when you get to pick the fruit.
No, absolutely. And, I don't think that there's any better example of all of that than Demond Williams. And when you look at just the way he was able to rebound in the second half and just how Jedd Fisch has been able to use him moving forward, what did you just see from his performance that you think you and I have talked about this several times on the show, that he can be a top 3, top 5 quarterback in this conference, or not even just the conference, in college football? And what can a performance like this do for him in particular, especially after the way, as you mentioned, the early interception, the way he was missing high early and often in this game, and then he was able to just really dial it in as the game goes along? Are these all things that obviously you can carry over against some pretty strong defenses that you're going to see over the next couple of weeks?
Absolutely. And I was, making the point there in our open to start the game. It's like, hey, Demond is a sophomore and Maryland's quarterback Malik Washington is a freshman, but really that was Demond's 7th start. So in terms of starting, he's in the back half of his freshman year, effectively, right? In terms of game experience. So everything's brand new. I was very curious to see, hey man, you had a bad game. You took too many sacks against Ohio State, but that was your first time experiencing that. How does he respond? I mean, this one was a great test. He's not the first quarterback to have immense talent and come out and just play terribly in the first half. How is he going to respond? Well, we saw how he responded. And again, I go back to Jedd and Jimmy D and the offensive coaching staff. Get into tempo a little bit. That forces Maryland to simplify their scheme. Try not to sub as much to wear out their defensive line. That slows down the pass rush, like little subtle moves. The biggest play in the game, though, is he threw an out route. I think it was from the right hash out to the left sideline.
To Raiden Vines-Bright.
Was it to Vines-Bright?
It was on third down, right?
It was on third down. It was right over their nickel. Kevin Humes was a zone defense. Yeah. Beautiful throw. Big throw because it was third down situation. Tough throw out to the sideline, and he just layered it in there and feathered it in there. That was a throw he was missing all day in the first half. He hits that, and all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, this is who I am. Then he gets his legs going a little bit. He looked like he had more juice in the second half. So I just give him a ton of credit, man. It's you have to fight. You have to bounce back. You have to have a short memory in football, and Demond showed all that.
And one guy that Demond really did hook up with, and I think he had a breakout game, was Dezmen Roebuck. Let's dive into him and some of these other young stars on the other side of the break. because we've got a message from our good friends over at Game Time. College football is back, and I couldn't be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, there's just nothing like it. But let's be real, actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. I pulled up Game Time, and in just a couple of taps, I saw amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite college football games for as low as $25. The app makes it super simple. You can even see the exact view from your seat before buying. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKDOWNCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. We've also got a message from our good friends over at Square, because this episode is brought to you by Square, and your favorite neighborhood spots run on Square. There are certain businesses that make the neighborhood the neighborhood. These are places that become an extension of home, whether it's a sports bar dedicated to your team's fan base, the spot with the best wings in town for game day, or that beloved local chain that's been rooted in your community for years. These businesses are what bring people together. When neighborhood businesses thrive, the whole neighborhood thrives. When we show up as a community, it can mean big business for local business owners, and money spent in the neighborhood stays in the neighborhood. And so you should take this ad as an excuse to go support your favorite local spot and have yourself a day in the neighborhood. Square is a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. You can go to square.com/go/lockdowncollege to learn more. But before you do, go support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy you did. Square, see you in the neighborhood. Jake, I've been so excited for Dezmen Roebuck. He was someone who didn't come into Washington with a lot of hype. He gets here in June, and, you talk about Jim Harbaugh saying that, we trust our evaluations more than 247 rivals, whoever. This guy is the peak example of that. He only had a few offers coming out of high school where he went to Marana down in Arizona, and he gets here in June, and every single day was, whoa, oh, wait, oh, he's making another play? He's doing that against Takario Davis, against Dylan Robinson, against Ephesians Prysock. Every single day, he found ways to separate, create space for himself, find a soft spot in the zone, just be a guy who would just be with Demond Williams at all points in time. They had such good chemistry together, and we just really saw that come to fruition. And of course, he makes one of the biggest plays in the game on that 34-yard touchdown.
Yeah, I mean, so that's a great point with the backstory there, because Jedd said that, he would watch them and Roebuck would come to their 7-on-7 camps. So he's been scouting them for years going back to high school. And he said every time at these 7-on-7 camps and one-on-ones that this guy would just flash. And what a great opportunity, because he doesn't have a ton of scholarship offers, that Jedd can just kind of quietly build this relationship until saying, hey, join me. Look at my history of developing wide receivers. You're going to be a star. And that trust gets earned. I got to imagine there's a loyalty, too, of Roebuck saying, Jedd believes in me, and he gave me an opportunity. I'm going to play so hard for him. And for freshmen, like, can I trust you to be in the right place at the right time? Can I trust you to make plays when the opportunity presents itself in the biggest moment? Check, check, check. I mean, that was a huge play. That was not an easy catch. Back of the end zone, having to track the ball. Maryland tries to punch it out right away. You have to have body awareness of where the back of the end zone is. Great catch, big moment, touchdown, great play. So, and he's got big playability. I think he's averaging like 15, 16 yards per catch right now. So talk about the ability to stretch and get behind the defense vertically. But he's got great feet too. I mean, he's just the total package as a wide receiver.
I couldn't agree with you more. And one of the things that really stood out to me, I know I was saying this to you before the game started too, is he just has a great feel. Whether it be zone coverages, he knows where the soft spot is. He knows exactly where he needs to be. And it's something where him and Demond Williams played together a little bit growing up. It's something he talked about when we got a chance to speak to him in a press conference last week. And the chemistry is just so clearly there between those two guys. And it's something you mentioned to me just right before we press record, is that was such a great read from Demond Williams on that throw, because, I mean, I don't know if you got a chance to watch the Apple Cup, but he barely missed that throw to Denzel Boston a couple weeks ago in Pullman, where he just barely overshot him out of the back of the end zone. And to see him dial it in like that is just so much fun to watch.
Yeah, I wish, I was calling for a replay on the air, because I wanted to show the scheme, and it was telling the whole story. Jalen Husky is Maryland's. He's a veteran. He's a senior, one of their safety, and he got injured earlier in the game. He came back, but he clearly wasn't 100%. So then they had to put a freshman in at safety. And what happened was Maryland was in single high coverage. The post should be dead against single high coverage. But what Jedd did, and this was intentional, it was a slight rollout to the right. So Dezmen leaves the pocket. He's rolling right. They were running an over route backside. That single high safety cut the over. And then Roebuck breaks to the post, and there was no one there in the middle field. So it was just a great scheme. Great job by Dezmen reading that. Beautiful pass. And Roebuck, great execution, breaking it down just across the board. Once again, just another key point. I think Jedd said this. What changed? We executed in the second half.
No, that's a really great point, because it's something where, looking forward, Washington has some really exciting young stars on this roster. Another guy who we just mentioned a few minutes ago that made a few plays in this game that this coaching staff has really, really high hopes for is Raiden Vines-Bright. And he just seems to be that guy who has the deep speed and the ability to clear out as we continue to watch his career develop. Is there anything you saw from him in this game that just kind of said, yeah, this is how he's going to fit into Jedd's offense moving forward?
It was less for him in this game. It was more about the other guys. I thought the guys that stole the show were Denzel Boston, Roebuck, and then Decker DeGraff was if there was someone to talk about to me, it was Decker DeGraff that really, really stood out. I mean, but Vines-Bright's, definitely an option. How many of his catches went for a first down? I'm looking at it right here, 3 for 29. I just
think all three of them did.
All three of them, right? It seemed like the freshmen we're just in the right position at the right time, having that feel like you talked about, the ability to extend drives. So they got options, man. That was a really great game, though, for DeGraff. Really great game. He was the one that kind of got Dezmen settled in my opinion. So great opportunity for the young tight end. I mean, probably one of the better games of his career.
Oh, please feel free to expand. I know, this is something when you and I first started chatting after the Weber State game last year, he was someone who really popped to you. What have you, now that you've gotten a chance to watch him in person, how have you seen him develop from last year to this year?
He kind of reminds me of myself in the sense of movement patterns. He's not a tight end that's going to run a 4.45 at the combine, but he's fast enough, and he also has a good feel, and he's got trusty hands, and he's got a good frame. And in Jedd's system, there's going to be opportunities for tight ends as long as you can block. So right now it seems like they bring in Quentin Moore when they need someone to block. Would love to see DeGraff get to another level where he can be a dominant or at least above average blocker, because that's only going to help him out in play action. But I mean, I don't know. He doesn't seem to have any issues catching the ball. All of those catches were clean, never double caught it. Good job of in those sit down routes over the ball. Little subtle things of as he's catching it, he's already drop stepping to get those extra yards. Like a lot of young guys, they catch, then they tuck, then they turn, then they run. But Decker DeGraff says, as I'm catching, I'm going to drop step. And all of a sudden, that's the difference between, 1 yard versus 5 to 10, and if not more yards. So I think that's really encouraging just for all the young guys that Washington's playing right now. They're playing with the technique and fundamentals and savviness of veterans, which just says a lot about the football IQ and acumen.
And that's one thing that this coaching staff has talked a lot about with John Mills. I know we mentioned him a few minutes ago. It's unfortunate that he got hurt. We're hoping to get an update on him here very soon. But this is a guy who came into this game as, okay, he's looked really, really solid through the first month. It's always telling when we in the media get a chance to talk with some of these true freshmen in a press conference setting. And after chatting with Dezmen Roebuck and John Mills last week moving into this game, it was very clear, okay, yeah, these are two guys that are just cornerstones of this program. And there was a thought that John Mills might start at left tackle in this game, something that Jedd Fisch talked a little bit about on Monday. And then he goes down and Paki Finau replaces him. What did those two guys show you? Because it's very clear that this coaching staff wants both of them to just be building blocks along this offensive line for the next 2, 3, 4 seasons. And it felt like this was a real coming out party for both guys.
Yeah. And Michael Switzer, the offensive line coach, I want to give him a ton of credit. He was there at Michigan with me since 2015. So he's followed Jedd almost everywhere. So talk about a relationship and a loyalty. And again, Switz said the same thing. He's like, man, I would go to war for Jedd, because not only has Jedd given him opportunities and then hired him as the offensive line coach, betting on Switzer, giving him a great opportunity. But he said that Jedd also, when Jedd would go to the NFL and he couldn't hire Switz, he was calling people and selling Switz. So I just say that again is like people love Jedd Fisch there. They love his leadership and they're invested. And for Mills, I listened to that interview. I'm like, these guys, how are these guys freshmen? There's like a maturity to them. He's still, but the mullet is awesome. The size, 6'6", 325 pounds. That's NFL size. There's a physicality to him. Maryland is an exotic defense. Like it's challenging. Ohio State does something similar. I know they were a little bit more vanilla against Demond, but to be on the same page as your offensive line, the best offensive lines are 5 guys that work as one unit, and that's what I'm talking about there is mental. A lot of freshman offensive linemen struggle with the mental aspect of learning the playbook. It's not run right, run left like in high school. In Mills, if you had no idea who he was, you would never guess that he's a true freshman out there. And there's also a challenge of the guys rotating around him. When Willis goes down and McCree comes in, all of a sudden that's completely different. Like that's a different communication. The double teams fit differently. The timing is different. And it just didn't matter. And then Paki Finau is a guy, when we did our recruiting show at the Big Ten Network, when he was coming out of high school, he was a guy that we have to like bang our fist on the ground for a prospect. And I banged my fist on the ground for Finau because I was watching some of he's got great feet. I mean, talk about a guy, a phenomenal athlete that's also really long, 6'5". I think he put on weight ahead of last season too, right? He added like 20, 30 pounds. So he'll as he grows and that weight becomes more mature and matured muscle rather than just weight, combined with his athleticism, that the future's in good hands. And I know that was a big area of emphasis for Washington was to improve in the trenches. And I'd say they got the job done.
One thing I'm glad you didn't mention, because it just makes me feel old in the same light, is John Mills is still 17 years old, and he will be for another 10 days as we recorded this on October 6th. One more guy that I wanted to chat with you about before we get out of here is Dylan Robinson. He's someone who I've been really excited about for a long time. At 6'3", 205, you would never guess that he plays corner. And then you watch him out there, he is just put in a really tough spot. Taking over for Tacario Davis, gets his first start against Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate at Ohio State, and he holds his own. I think he did a really solid job in that game. And then you look at, as he continues to improve, you mentioned that double move a little bit earlier. He was the one who got beat on that play, but it felt like he recovered from that really, really nicely. And in the same light as all these other guys, he just feels like a really just critical building block for this Washington team moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, it's talk about being like born into the fire, and it starts with like the body size. I think again, like Jedd has done a good job of not just bringing in good players, but the right players. And what'd you say, 6'3", 205 pounds, long arms. Look at Prysock, Davis. Those are all taller, longer corners. That is so critically important for Ryan Walters' defense when they play that press man in the one-on-one coverage. So they got the right amount of size. But then there's the trust aspect is, hey, Dylan, this is a big test. You're going up against Jeremiah, and Carnell Tate is going to be a first-round pick this year. Mark my words. I mean, he is a first-round talent. They have 2 elite receivers, and then guys on the bench that are elite and an elite tight end. I'm talking about Ohio State. So, Dylan, we're going to need you at times to play one-on-one. We're going to put you in some tough positions. But trust us that we're also going to protect you at times, and we're going to blend coverage, and we're never going to put you in a position that you are incapable of succeeding in. And I think that trust is a big aspect, and then was able to build off of it. Maryland, I've always looked at as like a mini Ohio State, where they consistently develop wide receivers. It's just their wide receivers go in the second and third and fourth round rather than the first round, but very similar passing scheme and passing philosophy to Ohio State and recruiting philosophy in terms of their receivers. So these were 2 big tests, and, check, passed it. Again, you would not know that he's a true freshman out there holding his own.
Jake, it's always tremendous having you on. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to all you everydayers out there for tuning in. We really do appreciate your support. If you like what we have to offer, please make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. We're there. We're everywhere. We're updating this channel with new content every single day. So please make sure you click that like button, click that little bell so you never miss when we post a new show. Plus, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, drop right down below in the comment section. And if you're audio only, please leave us a 5-star review, as it does help us out a lot. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you on Wednesday.